Well, welcome back as we head into hour two. As mentioned, I was going to give you all a little breaking news here, a little local breaking news with someone sitting across from me who is that news maker. Many of you know him from our Friday chats. He is George Khalaf. We have him on to talk about all kinds of politics, given his brains and brilliance when it comes to all things political consulting, analysis, and polling. And now he is going to become a practitioner of what he preaches. I received an email this morning that said, Seth, today I have a big announcement, and I wanted you to be among the first to know. George, what's your big announcement?
Well, Seth, first and foremost, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather. It's my first official interview since this announcement. Right. And to do this with you, my brother, my friend, someone who we spent a lot of time contemplating these thoughts. So I'm grateful to have that you've had me on. The big announcement is that I have thrown my hat in the ring. I'll be running for State House here in Arizona in Legislative District 3, which, for those of you that don't know where that is, it's the Northeast Valley, the areas of Anthem, Cave Creek, Carefree, parts of North Phoenix, all of North Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, and Rio Verde, and an area that I've lived in and around for 12 years. And after a lot of contemplation, my wife Brianna and I, and praying, we decided that we needed to be all in. We felt called to this and so excited for the path ahead. And frankly, it has been so humbling. The support, the emails, the texts, the social media comments and messages. It's been an amazing day. I'm very grateful.
Well, you know, the community ought to be grateful to you for doing this. It's hard to run for office. It just is. And for anyone that has done it, they will explain the difference between explaining it and doing it. It's a very difficult thing, and it comes with a lot of barbs. It comes with a lot of challenges, not only on family time, but even, with the media and the reputational slanders that go on. So thank you for doing it because, one of the common laments is how are we going to get great people in this environment? How are we going to find great people who are willing to take those slings and arrows? You are a great person. You are a great person to be doing this, you bet, and you are willing to take the slings and arrows. And for that, we doff our hats to you, George Khalaf. If people want to learn more about you or support your campaign, they can go to georgekhalaf.com.
Yeah, George, George, and then my last name is Khal as in Larry, AF as in Frank.com. And you can sign up to hear from us. And Seth, often, since I know many of the listeners that I've had a chance to meet in person over the years, you would have heard me talk a lot. We talk a lot about vision, casting a vision for the future. And the tagline of this campaign, intentionally so, is some phrase that I say all the time: conservative vision for the future of Arizona. That's the entire heart behind this. Would love to unpack that with you and talk about what that could mean. But our state, I think, is yearning for it. We do have a lot of it from some folks, but we're also missing a lot of it from others. I'm grateful to continue great leadership in the area that I hope to run in with our two current representatives. With one of them, it's an open seat, also to clarify for folks. I'm not challenging someone. One of the representatives, Representative Calden, is running for a statewide office, so there's an open seat now.
Fantastic. Let me offer up that you're willing to take phone calls as well if you have questions for George, 602-508 0960. Let me, from the email you sent this morning, talk a little bit about some of what you're running on, and you feel free to build on or add to any of it. We need to build a pro-family economy, support parenthood, stop woke indoctrination of the next generation, empower parents in their child's upbringing and education, make our K-12 system work for families, secure our borders, stand for our constitutional freedoms, make Arizona healthy again, and demand free and fair elections with full transparency. And that's just the start. It's a lot.
It is a lot. But honestly, as we were going together with the team, I'm usually the one that espouses 2 to 3 top issues. We just couldn't whittle it down. Yep. There is a lot to talk about. And look, I don't want anyone to feel like, well, George left this out. What does that mean? And even then, you covered the kind of the high points, and there's lots of sub bullets. Look, this is my bottom line philosophy. This was also in my email. I believe in a central truth. I'm a Christian. That's what drives me, and with that, everything else flows from it. That's what guides everything. That's the lens that I view the world. As I was sharing with someone earlier, smaller government can cause problems as much as large government. So smaller government is good, but government that works for its people is even better. Elected officials that lean in, that are accessible, that look, we're not going to agree with on everything. And I tell that to people all the time. Let's have a dialogue. Let's not ignore. I'm not going to talk down to my constituents or to voters. And a wise person who I talked to as part of this contemplation said, legislators have one job: to support good bills and to oppose bad bills. I understand that may seem like common sense, but it is important to just lay that out in its bare bones. There are bad bills that we have to oppose, and there's great bills that we have to support.
Absolutely. But one of the things that excites me about your candidacy and your going to the State House of Representatives on the opposing bad and supporting the good is that you can't do it without public opinion. Public opinion is the basis not only for your election but for all our laws. And thus someone has to, as Lincoln said, be the shaper and molder and explainer of why their opinion is right. Why you are perfectly cast and pitched to be the kind of candidate and state legislator that can explain to people, explain to constituents, explain to other Arizonans, even outside of your district, why these policies might be good and why they might be bad. You sometimes have to hold a hand through an argument, through a discussion, before you even get to the vote. And that's why I'm excited to have someone like you who doesn't just sit there and occupy space, but actually is a believer in everything you're doing, and not just because of one reason or two reasons or three reasons, but the entirety of who you are, as you say, a man of faith, family man, and an educated and studied conservative.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that. And look, District 3 is, ironically, a large geographic district for a district that's in Maricopa County. Thousands of voters, tens of thousands. And I want to meet as many as possible, knock doors, have events. But I also am not going to let up on the work that I do traveling the entire state, talking to folks about the data, exactly what you just mentioned.
You're passing laws for the whole state.
Tonight, I have a speech that's not in the district. Next week, Tuesday, a number of folks have reached out like, well, are you going to have to cancel those?
I know where you're going tonight. I was there last month. I know exactly.
I said, absolutely, I'm not going to cancel those. Are you kidding me? What greater responsibility? If anything, I should feel the responsibility increase if I desire to be a member, and Lord willing will be a member, to then be able to go out and spread this. Because the moment that the primary is done, because in District 3 it's all about the Republican primary on August 4th, then number one priority is going to be District 4, which is where I'm honored to be able to speak tonight, talking about data, talk about candidates that we need to recruit, all the things that I've been doing. Next week I'm going to be in Sun City. I'm going to be in Prescott in January and a number of places in between then, because all of it matters for the future of the state. I love the state of Arizona. I've had the honor of living here for almost 30 years after my parents legally immigrated here from Lebanon as Lebanese Christians fleeing the situation there at the end of the Civil War that we unfortunately lost after my uncle died. My parents met in that war, and that's where my beliefs start from. And of course have grown, and now as a proud American and as someone who has three boys, and who not just is excited to raise his kids in America, raise his kids in Arizona, will never leave the state. I should be honored to be able to represent the great people.
I remember talking to another Lebanese Christian immigrant who was involved in politics, and asked why she was involved in politics. She had a chilling answer. She said, I saw how you can lose a country, and I don't want to lose too.
100%. It is real, right? Yeah. Religious freedom, to me, something I talk a lot about. Yeah. It's not a theoretical thing. It's a real thing. It's a real thing for Christians across the Middle East. It's real for Christians in Nigeria. Yeah. While, yes, as a member in the state legislature in Arizona, I can't affect foreign policy. I'm not going to Congress. But I can still use my voice, whether it's for Nigerian Christians, Armenian Christians, Assyrian Christians, you name it, for these folks that don't have an ability, because that's the core of religious freedom. And then, of course, in the United States of America, to be able to live out our deeply held religious beliefs. There's a lot of work to do, right? There's a lot of work to do. I'm excited to tackle it. And while people joked, oh, have you lost your mind? I tell them as graciously as I can, no, it's literally a joy for me to do this.
I can attest to that because I've seen your trajectory of emotions over the last 4 years. We used to tease each other about who would, and I have seen you move closer and closer to this decision, and every time you made a step closer to the decision, the happier you were about it.
Absolutely. That's how I feel.
We don't have cameras in here for a good reason, but if we did, they'd see huge smiles on your face, and they'd see one on mine, too. George Khalaf is my guest candidate for State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3. Learn more about him or help him out at georgekhalaf.com, and Khalaf is spelled Khalaf. George and I'll be right back. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff policy-wise, and he's also happy to take your calls at 602-508-0960. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. George Khalaf is my guest, and we were just talking off air when he's usually here with us on Fridays doing, the political scene and polls and things like that. He was saying, reminding me, we usually start with national politics and drill down locally. Today, because of he being a newsmaker today, we're starting locally because he is running for local office, sort of, statewide and district-wide in a sense. Statewide in that it's for the State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3. So George Khalaf has announced today that he is running for House of Representatives, State of Arizona, Legislative District 3. And you can learn more about him by going to his website, georgekhalaf.com. He spells his last name Khalaf. We'll get to some national news, and we'll use you in your capacity as an analyst, political analyst, in a few moments. I want to talk a little bit more about your candidacy here in the state of Arizona. One of the things you are expert at, of course, and have been very involved in, as I've known you in your charitable and other works, is, of course, in support of the family unit, in support of crisis pregnancy centers, in support of the pro-life cause, in support of religious freedom. One of the other things you've been involved in a lot lately is education.
Yes.
And this is, of course, all of those are where my heart beats. I just don't know if I know as much about everything else I mentioned as I do education. So talk to us a little bit about education.
Yeah. I mean, look, Seth, as you opened up astutely in your monologue with the new report that came out about remedial math at UCSD, look, what does that tell us? That tells us that in K-12, our teachers, and I shouldn't say our teachers, many of our K-12 institutions, usually they're public schools, because that's candidly where still a vast majority of students are educated, have spent more time worrying about progressive ideology, wokeism, pronouns, and transgender rights, and they have core academics. That's a key part of what I'm running on. Why? Because we see the NAEP scores, which is the National Academic Assessment, and we see how poorly that we're doing. And for the fact that college students have to take remedial math.
And by remedial, we mean elementary and middle school.
I mean, cannot be more depressing and disappointing. And should it be then a surprise that parents in surveys, voters, and what common sense Arizonans want is to focus on academics, especially when you're in your formative years of K-8. Because then as you get older, 9, 12, then you're starting to learn about all kinds of things and preparing for life. And, many people don't go to college, and that's amazing. You go to trade school or they launch right into their business. So many opportunities today. But the more that we focus on having the school indoctrinate our kids and the less that we focus on core academics, this is the negatives that we get. So how can anyone who's acting in good faith, who isn't just acting out of a desire to indoctrinate our children with progressive ideology, how can they say that we should not focus on math and reading? And look, we have states. Mississippi. Yeah. I love to call out Mississippi. Mississippi was at the bottom in reading scores, and they are now near the top. So there is a path. There's things that we can do, and that's why I'm a proud supporter of school choice. Why? Because parents should be in charge. That's the simple question. Who should be in charge of raising their kids? Parents. And with schooling options, with that, if you have options to send your kids other places, if your kids' school is not teaching them core academics, then you send them somewhere else, which many folks don't have the opportunity to do if it weren't for these school choice programs.
And that's really the heart of the beginning of the fight. In my monologue, I was quoting a bunch of education teacher union officials in California. And the head, for example, of the largest teachers union in California was talking about, when she won the presidency of her union for the second time, that her demands include, and I'm quoting, social emotional learning, culturally relevant curriculum, and eliminating school police, and reducing standardized testing. Now, the thing about they're ignoring the traditional concepts of what we think of as education, reading, writing, that sort of arithmetic, is it's almost as if they want our kids dumb, these teachers' unions, because part of the fight is it's got about three elements to it. Part of the fight is you can teach them this culturally relevant stuff as they define it without the kids being able to critically think about it. If they don't know how to read and write and do math, you can propagandize them so much easier when they are simply uneducated in the basics of research, in the basics of cognitive development or thinking or arguing or discovery or debate. That's one element of it. Another element of it, though, I think, is this notion that you just spoke to, which is when you read their speeches, George, it's all about how they talk about these teachers' unions leaders, and Joe Biden himself was doing this. They think the kids are theirs.
Yeah.
Again and again and again, they do not think during the school day hours that parents should have rights and parents should have the direction of the educational direction of their children. They all speak of the kids as they are ours. These are our babies. These are our kiddos. And that is such a power grab of the kind of thing that makes me think of Cuba, where the state is in charge of everything. And these teachers' unions really come out of that kind of mindset.
Yeah. And honestly, even worse than that, Seth, some believe that the kids are theirs even outside of school hours, because if the kids have parents that are bigoted or way too religious or too close-minded, then no, that parent shouldn't be in charge of their child ever.
Right.
I mean, that's coming from, we talk a lot about progressive ideology. Academic progressives are the scariest of all because they're the ones that are infecting the psyche and the mindset of the broader progressive base that says these things. And to the point that you made, not only should parents be in charge of their kids' education, the fact that we're focusing more on culturally appropriate things or removing school resource officers, the ones, by the way, that protect children, the ones that are standing up in many of these horrific school shootings and taking that person down, or the one that's helping keep drugs out of the school, that's their first line of defense, of course. But let's chalk up a whole bunch of counselors, not in the traditional sense how we may have had counselors that help you kind of guide what you want for your future. It's the ones that we're just talking about, sort of whatever their version of quote unquote mental health is. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I was thinking, the Democrats tried to do such a snow job of saying they were never for defunding the police. And then, we play all the tape and they kind of say, yeah, well, maybe it wasn't a good idea and we've moved on from that. Not the teachers' unions, which is really one of the biggest parts of the Democratic Party. I don't know a greater institutional support of the Democratic Party than teachers' unions.
They have a vice grip. Yeah. They have a vice grip on the party. Yeah. And it's unbelievable. And again, their main way that they combat our thinking and conservative thinking and common sense principles is by opposing school choice, because they want to maintain a vice grip and a monopoly on education, and we have to tell them no. At the same time, by the way, that we lean in and make our public schools better.
You bet.
Right?
Absolutely.
We have to do that. We cannot ignore that. That's why I'm proud to be supported by Amy Carney, who's on the Scottsdale School Board, for that reason.
Right.
Seth.
I was just going there. I was praising yesterday or whenever, I can't praise them enough, groups like Arizona Women for Action and the kinds of things that they got Karen Werner and Amy Carney to do in running for school board, because still the majority of people will be going to the public schools, and we live with those students. We live with those graduates. They're our citizens. They're our fellow citizens, and we can't give up on them either. George Khalaf is my guest. He and I will be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. Delighted to have George Khalaf in studio. Today he announced that he's running for the Arizona House of Representatives in Legislative District 3. You can go to his website, georgekhalaf.com, to learn more or help out, Khalaf. I've known this man for 11 years. I can tell you his soul and character is intact. I sound like Al Pacino at the end of Son of a Woman. Sorry about that. I guess I appreciate it worse. It's a perfectly fine scene, I suppose. But I'm so delighted that you're doing this. Now, LD3, major parts include Anthem, all of North Scottsdale. Where else? Cave Creek, you said?
Cave Creek, Carefree, parts of North Phoenix, Rio Verde, and Fountain Hills.
All right. So when you're out doing events, I want to go with you, if you'll have me, to the events in Cave Creek and Carefree. I just love those places. I love those cowboy bars. I want to go to the Buffalo Chip and Harold's and the Horny Toad and the Tonto Bar and Grill and the El Encanto. I want to do Cave Creek with you you'll have me, if I can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah, I would love to spend time in Cave Creek with you. It would be just a ton of fun. You are running locally, but you work and think nationally, as many people know from your regular Friday visits here. What's going on nationally? A lot is going on nationally. The shutdown, certainly, my guess is in about 2 weeks, no one will be talking about the shutdown, but you tell me.
Yeah, I agree. Look, it has had some serious impact on people.
Yeah.
I mean, not least of which flights, first and foremost. But we had predicted, you and I had talked quite a bit on how was this going to end.
Yeah.
And we saw how it ended. There finally were Democrats that were, it was made clear to them that if they do not do this, there was going to be deep pain in their states. And while the surveys it showed it was fairly even, and some surveys showed maybe Republicans were blamed slightly, but really the numbers were so close. But the bottom line is it got worse and worse, and there was no off-ramp. The demands that the Democrats were making were not feasible, were not viable. Step one was to reopen the government, ensure people could fly, ensure people are getting paid. But also Seth had illuminated that we lived 40 days without our federal government being funded. And while there were some very in-our-face things, there's also a whole bunch of things that nobody thought twice about, right? Which even after all that the president and his administration have done to trim the craziness of D.C. and the federal bureaucracy, there still was enough to fact that workers that were getting furloughed or cut or whatnot, again, while we heard a lot about, SNAP and others, and we could talk about that, fine. But for the most part, there's a whole lot of people and a whole lot of agencies that didn't have people report, and we were not feeling it. That is just crazy. I would venture to say that if our state government or even if our city government, if you couldn't get a hold of someone in water or trash or something like that, it would have an immediate impact on our lives. And it's just a testament to the fact that the closer to people, the more impactful it is. And frankly, DC is something that has to be managed, not the other way around.
And I like, if I can tie that back, and we'll get to the national story, a few other national stories I want to do with you. But if I can tie that back to something you were saying in one of our first two segments about just making government more local doesn't necessarily, or trimmer doesn't necessarily make it better. Many of us who have wanted devolution out of Washington, D.C., when that was the big thing in the early 90s under Newt Gingrich, learned that state bureaucracies can be just as bad, if not sometimes worse, than federal bureaucracies.
Yeah, let's look at the state of California. Look, Small government's good. Efficient government is better because to be efficient, you have to be small and manageable, but also you have to be efficient. Why do we say government at the speed of business? Why do people like saying that? Because business operate more efficiently. I mean, government, you have pre-meetings and post-meetings about meetings, and you have so much conversation, so much waste, so many chief deputies and assistants to this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, actually, let me say it this way. If the federal government can't deliver all mail appropriately and can't figure out how to do that efficiently, then we really can't trust them to do much. And again, grateful for what's been done, and frankly, grateful for the state of Arizona, while a lot of it has regressed, unfortunately, under our current governor, Katie Hobbs, that we did make lots of strides in trimming our state government and getting rid of agencies that were redundant or were unnecessary, and that for every regulation we passed, we trimmed one or two or three, all important. We made it easier for people to work with licensure and so many good things that have happened prior to, of course, Katie Hobbs, and I'm hopeful will happen post Katie Hobbs. But the federal government has a lot more work to do. I mean, we need another 50 years of conservatives in D.C. to probably right the ship.
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about that ship, and we'll do that when we come back. I saw you and I we weren't listening, but we were both drawn to a story on Fox News. I think the crawl said something like our socialists taking over the Democratic Party as a question mark. Yes, and I would like to ask you whether that should be a question mark or an exclamation point.
Exclamation point.
I
Five
think
of them.
Too. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. George Khalaf is my guest. He is, as he announced today and as he announced here, running for the State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3, open seat. Delighted to have him here to give me the the opportunity to be his first person interviewing him as he makes this great announcement. You can help him out by going to his website, georgekhalaf.com. George is standard George. Khalaf is Khalaf. You and I were watching a segment or two ago on TV on mute question that I think it was Fox News was posing: is the Democratic Party how did they cast it? Is the Democratic Party at risk of being taken over by socialists? On the same day that it looks like this DSA candidate for mayor in Seattle did win.
Yes.
And obviously, as we've noted here on this show any number of times, the various polling, there's a brand new one out. I don't know if you saw it. Brand new poll out today from YouGov showing that support for favorable view of socialism in the Democratic Party is now 62%. So it's not a question mark anymore.
No, it's, as I was joking, it's 5 exclamation points. And look, the DSA is dangerous. And let me tell you why. Not just do they support something that history has obviously proven is grotesque, has killed, socialism, communism has killed more people than any other ideology on the face of the planet. But they're dangerous because they cover their lies and they wrap it with talks of affordability and standing up for the little guy. And they sound a little bit like they're using some of our MAGA talking points, or look, President Trump talked a lot about affordability and has continued to in his administration, and many members of his administration do, and the vice president does, and that's how he ran when he was a senator in Ohio. But what they fail to talk is that a centimeter below the surface level, the emperor has no clothes. It's all lies. It's all based on debunked economic theory and truths that all want to usurp everyone for the power of government, and our lives are, of course, going to be worse off, if not tremendously worse off. But they can lie their way. I mean, look at the new mayor in New York. He promised all kinds of things, and I mentioned this the last time we were on before the election. 65% of people wanted all those goodies, and a much smaller percentage thought that it was doable, that these things were actually feasible, and he's going to be facing that as mayor, that a bunch of stuff that he promised isn't actually doable because money doesn't grow on trees or sprout up from the ground.
And if one were to study history and look at other socialist or even regimes that call themselves democratic socialists, they realize very quickly that the rhetoric doesn't allow the actuality. It doesn't allow the fulfillment of the promise that they campaign on, which is why they all end up being such murderous regimes, which is why they all end up being such regimes of force. What they cannot do democratically, they always and inevitably end up as regimes that will do it through force, through death. I don't want anyone to be under any illusions that by simply putting the word Democrat in front of the word socialist in any way detoxifies the Marxism inherent in the DSA platform and in the DSA cause. Go to the DSA website. Look what they stand for.
Yeah.
Go to the Venezuelan Constitution. Look how they call themselves a democratic socialist state. Go to the Cuban Constitution. Look how they call themselves a democratic socialist state. Go to the North Korean Constitution. Look how they call themselves a democratic socialist state. Think about what the USSR stood for in its day. Think about today, just today, one of Zoran Mamdani's greatest supporters and cheerleaders, who has millions of followers on social media, millions, and who gave him a lot of podcast time, is touring China right now as we speak. And he just said today what he said election night, which is he wishes the USSR had won the Cold War. When you say you don't need to go a centimeter, you don't need to go a millimeter. When you said that you would have it not as a question mark but as 5 exclamation points, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. It is so in our face and so real. And Senator Sanders, in opposing the shutdown, said that while of course we need to vote on ACA, but he clarified. He's like, I'm not a supporter of the Affordable Care Act because I believe everybody should have health care. Right. When Sanders and AOC did their tour, they drew larger crowds than Kamala Harris ever did. Yeah. Obviously, Kamala Harris is Kamala Harris, but you know what I mean. For the purpose of this discussion, what do I say that? Because
the candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency got fewer people in her audiences than
because the base of the Democratic Party are not just progressive ideologues; they are socialists, and there are some that are falling prey to that false religion, which I do believe it is. Socialism is espoused as a religion and as an ideology that displaces any and all other religion and makes the state supreme. And then even the line from the DSA that the only way to combat fascism is with socialism, they have doubled and tripled down in calling Republicans fascist and then using that to justify socialism. I mean, Seth, can we imagine something worse than that? They're lying overtly, and they're gaining traction in the other major party in the country. We have two major parties. It's either Republicans or Democrats. And if the Democratic Party becomes the Democratic Socialist Party, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you, common sense will end up reigning supreme. And anyone who thinks that the USSR should have won the Cold War is absolutely bananas, in place of another phrase. And there's no longevity there. There can't be, because it's a lie that will ruin families and ruin our economy and ruin what makes us uniquely American.
I'm glad you made the theological point about it. One of 3 or 4 of the very best books on communism is a book written by 5 ex-communists, and it was called The God That Failed, very popular in its day in the 50s. Probably people ought to go buy it again, The God That Failed, and read what these people had to experience. But George, one of the tells here is, as you mentioned Kamala Harris, I was just trying to think. One of the tells here is that if there is a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party right now, if there is, why can you and I not think of a Democrat of some seniority or some quote-unquote moderate respectability that denounced any of this? I can think of Fetterman, and that's it. Maybe Richie Torres. That's it.
Of course, because that's not where the party is. Right. The party is exactly where the Democratic Socialists are. That is the future of the party. And let's see who they nominate for president to go up against J.D. Vance. And you know what? I think the vice president, should he be the nominee, would relish an opportunity to debate any one of them, 16 on 1, frankly. Why? Because literally everything that he espouses is a perfect antidote to the horrific lies that socialism presents, because he lived it. He is the definition, like many of us, of the American dream, and he has a lot to say, and so does President Trump and the entire MAGA movement, about why socialism is horrible and why that does not work.
And if it's the Secretary of State, his family fled it. Absolutely right.
So many of these amazing American dream stories.
You bet. That came out of nightmares. The nightmares that the Democratic Party wants to reinstantiate into our polity.
Fleeing war and economic depression.
You bet. Let me take a quick commercial break. We have a quick last segment, and I'll let you explain again the breaking news that you brought us today. George Khalaf is my guest. He and I will be right back with a closing thought. It's been a pleasure having George Khalaf in studio today. He announced he's running for Arizona State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3. It's an open seat. Wonderful. You can go to his website, georgekhalaf.com, to learn more about him or help out. KHALAF. He, in an email he put out this morning, is running to build a pro-family economy, support parenthood, stop woke indoctrination of the next generation, empower parents in their child's upbringing and education, make our K-12 system work for families, secure our borders, stand for our constitutional freedoms, make Arizona healthy again, and demand free and fair elections with full transparency. As just a start, close us out, George, with anything you want to weigh in on regarding that or anything else.
So, Seth, as I always try to do in this last segment, is not just say something positive, but say something that talks about the future. And as I mentioned, that's the heart of this campaign. Right, top of fold, if you go to the website, casting or conservative vision for Arizona's future. Why do I believe in that? Because of how proud I am to be a conservative, because of everything that I know to be true about America and American values, because I understand that I can't take it for granted. I was not born here. My family had to legally immigrate here in the 90s, and we're very blessed that we were able to, and that my parents were willing to make that sacrifice. I understand the depth and the intensity of that freedom, and I'm going to do everything in my power, not just to defend it, but to advocate for it. Defense is a posture that you take, that you let people come to you and then you push back against them. No, I will be out there forging a path. I have been proud to support and come alongside leaders that have done just that. And I'm proud to have their endorsements in this race, not least of which is a dear, dear friend in former Senator Nancy Bartow. Why? Because these individuals have come before me. They have done amazing work for our state. Some of them continue to do amazing work, and I'm proud to come alongside them because it's too important not to. And I am optimistic. I do have an energy that is absolutely renewed. And yeah, at some point I did feel like Eeyore because, man, many of the voters felt like Eeyore, and we've been through a lot of darkness as a country and as a state. But I see hope. I see it on the horizon. I even see it now, and it's no accident that President Trump is calling for a golden age in America, and I feel it. I want to be a part of it. I want to motivate our voters in that direction, and there's no greater honor or blessing than to be able to call myself a representative of the people. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful, and I want to talk to as many voters as I can and earn their support, because it is too important to sit by the sidelines and not fight for our values. And so thank God I get to do this. I find it a blessing that I get to do this. And of course, I always look forward to being on with you, Seth.
Thank you. You're a blessing to our show. Your wife, Brianna, is a blessing. The two of you are an unstoppable force. We wish you all Godspeed.
Thank you.
You bet. David Harsanyi coming right up.